Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for coming to this panel on a very rainy day. My name is Brian Tam. I'm the Executive Director of the Independent Film Festival Boston. I want to welcome you for joining us here. Obviously, the focus of the festival is a lot about films, but I think it's really important that we get together to talk about things just outside of watching films themselves. And this is a panel I'm actually very excited about. This is a group of people doing really exciting work, and when we kind of reached out to the Left Foundation and asked if they had any ideas for panels. We weren't sure what they were going to come up with, and this feels like a humdinger, and I'm super excited that you're part of it. I guess you didn't come here to hear me, so I'm going to introduce you to Jen from Left.
Cool. Thanks so much, Brian.
Enjoy.
And thanks again to all of the staff of IFFBoston for making this whole festival possible every year. It wouldn't be possible for us to bring people together to talk without their great work. And thanks as well to Lef. I'm the program assistant at Lef, and it was really a pleasure to put this event together. So Lyda Kuth and Sarah Archambault are my colleagues there, and big thanks to them, and to the Somerville as well. So I'm just going to say a little bit about Lef, and then a little bit about each of the people who are on this panel here, and then I'm going to hand it over to our moderator. So as many of you might know, wait, actually, how many of you know of Lef? Okay, great. So some of you know, and someone's walking in who knows of Lef as well. So Lef is a documentary film funder. The goal of Lef is to fund the work of independent documentary film and video artists in New England, and to broaden recognition and support for their work. And aside from its work as a funder, Lef also really hopes to help foster and support discussion around the film ecosystem, and just what is missing, what's not missing, in terms of how that supports the creative work of independent filmmakers in the region. So for this event, we're kind of taking a closer look at how collectives play a role in the film ecosystem and infrastructure for filmmakers here. So we're really excited to bring together this group of local filmmakers, all of whom are working with really unique collectives, all doing totally different things in the region, and also more broadly outside of the region too. I'm just going to introduce each of them, say a few words, and then our moderator as well, I'll say a little bit about her. So we have Rob Todd, who is a founding member of the AGX Film Collective. And Rob has been working for many years at Emerson College as a professor, but also recently became involved with AGX, which is an artist-run film laboratory that focuses on the creation and appreciation of photochemical filmmaking. And I guess I can say a little bit more about Rob, too. He's very well established within the experimental film community, and his films have screened all over the world, so really a pleasure to have him here. Eric Gulliver is from the Nonfiction Cartel, and the Nonfiction Cartel was founded in 2012. AGX was founded in 2015, so both fairly recent. Eric Gulliver works for Frontline as an editor, and also has made many different short films that have screened around the world. Very talented filmmaker and editor in his own right, and was the co-founder and now the co-chair of the Nonfiction Cartel, which was founded to create a forum for local documentary filmmakers who focus on the short form. So the Nonfiction Cartel, doesn't have a space like AGX does, but they get together regularly to share resources and to talk about how to support one another. Jesse Epstein is an award-winning filmmaker who is a part of Film Fatales. Film Fatales is actually a national network of, I should just make sure that I have the wording on this right. So it's a network of women filmmakers who meet regularly to mentor each other, to share resources, to collaborate on projects, and to build a supportive community in which to make their films. So the Boston chapter is newer, but it was founded in New York. So Boston was founded in 2015. But we can talk more about that, yeah. And so Jessie herself has screened in over 40 film festivals worldwide, including the Museum of Modern Art, Mouse Mocha. She's worked on a lot of youth media programs as well, and she's been listed as one of the 25 new faces of independent film by Filmmaker magazine, so another really awesome filmmaker to have on this panel. And last but not least, Leanne Brandon, who is one of the founders of New Day Films, which is a distribution cooperative that is national in scale. and was founded in 1971. So I should say that Leanne is one of the first independent women filmmakers to emerge from the women's movement, and she, aside from her work with New Day, is really well known for her photography work. So her photos have been published in the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, the Boston Globe. She's also had a number of films, including Anything You Want to Be, Betty Tells Her Story, How to Prevent a Nuclear War, which have screened all over the world. So apologies for the rushed introductions. I hope you each can say a little bit more later. Anne-Marie Stein is our moderator for today, and Anne-Marie is really I think a pillar of the filmmaking community here, because she was the executive director of the Boston Film and Video Foundation for a number of years, which was super involved with just like connecting people and education, and I think we'll have an interesting perspective on everything that we're going to be talking about today. And now she's the Dean of Professional and Continuing Education at Mass College of Art and Design, and also worked with Northern Light, which is a documentary production company. So I leave you to discuss.
So just very briefly, I'll say that I spent 14 years at BFF, and which started out in the constellation of media art centers around the country, and have always been really interested in organizations and organizational behavior. And BFF actually, my experiences at BFF drove me to go back to school and get an MBA, and I was particularly interested in the organizational behavior stuff, so this is going to be great. Anyway, I thought maybe we could start and just each of you could give some quick facts about your collectives, maybe how long, how big, and what the original need was, just in your words, from your perspective. So what was it that actually drove you? So if we could keep this short, we'll just do a quick go around. Leanne, do you want to start?
Okay. New Day is a participatory filmmakers cooperative. And we started out with a distribution cooperative. We distribute our films together cooperatively. We started with 4 of us in 1971. There are now over 150 of us, depending on how you count active and semi-active members. We have close to 300 films in the co-op. We have a huge annual revenue. I'm not sure how public we go with that. They're bending around $1 million a year. This doesn't come to me. Let me just give you a little context for how New Day got started. In 1971, the women's movement was very, very small. There were small collectives all over the country. I was a member of Bread and Roses, and what we were concerned about at the time were women's rights, equal pay. There were no laws against sexual harassment. There were no laws against, anyway, it was not a good time for women. We couldn't even get our own credit card. I was working in a public school, and I was also a member of a co-op, and I made a film called Anything You Want to Be, which is one of the very first films of the women's movement. It was a very, very popular film among women's groups because it was trying to tell the story of what was the women's movement about, because we had no other outlets. Cable didn't exist, the internet didn't exist, there were only 4 network channels in Boston, and none of them wanted to show independent films or political films. So even though my film and a couple of other films across the country were incredibly popular, we couldn't get our films out, and we didn't know how to do it exactly. So my film was at a festival, and I got a phone call from Julia and Jim and Emily, Julia Reichert, Jim Klein, Emily Rothschild, who had seen my film at the first International Festival of Women's Films. And they had been having the same problem that I was having, is how do you get your film out? Because there was no other outlet. So we formed New Day Films, and we could watch the women's movement catch fire across the country by where our films were being used. First it was in sort of Ann Arbor, New York, California, and then we started seeing our films being used in Texas, you know, Alabama. Well, my film was banned in Missouri, but that, they didn't seem to get the idea of women's rights, still don't. But anyway,
So I'm going to stop you
anyway, so that's the story of New Day.
there. Okay, great. Jesse?
And just to say,
And Jesse is a member of New Day.
since 2005, I think. So I actually have much more experience in New Day films than I do in film fatales, but I can tell you a little bit about film fatales. And basically, the need was that, you know, there aren't a lot of women in the film industry, and this woman, Leah Meneroff in New York in 2013, decided, you know, I want to do something about this. So how do we kind of band together and create an old girls network instead of an old boys network? So the idea came about to have these revolving monthly dinner parties, and they're fairly simple, but they are also structured. So I started a chapter in Boston about 7 months ago, but it's been already an amazing sort of networking tool, because at every meeting you have a discussion and you have a meal, but then you also have an ask. So it's, you say, like, I'm looking for an editor, I'm looking for a distributor, whatever it is, and so you really use time to kind of help each other make things actually happen, and Leanne's also part of that, and it's been an amazing way. I moved to Boston from Brooklyn about 2 years ago, so it's been a great sort of landing pad, because all of a sudden it's already, I'm working with an editor that I met through the Film Fatales meeting.
And about how many people participate in film?
So it's happening now. I think there's about 24 chapters, and it's now international. And yeah, so and the Boston chapter has been kind of an incredible thing, because usually I think it starts about 5 people and it kind of grows. And we've had meetings and they average like 22, 23 people, and it's like been incredible. And what's also different about the Boston chapter, it's not, we're a little more renegade, like a little more loose. In New York, it's very much like women directors, and here it's kind of flowered out to include a lot of people in the film industry. And it's been really great to be part of. Yeah. Oh, and the other thing I'll also say is that just as a filmmaker, a lot of times when I go to film festivals, I show shorts a lot of times, and I'm always mostly the only woman at the end of the Q&A, so there's like 10 of us showing films. And so what this organization is also trying to do is change that. So we've created this database of our films, and so programmers can go and access the database and say, okay, this film's about to come out. This, you know, so it's a way of elevating female filmmakers as a whole.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. So my name is Eric Gulliver, and I'm with the Nonfiction Cartel, which is about 14 members right now. It's a very small group. We've been around since 2012, so I started it with Beth Balaban and myself. And the need, it wasn't so much a need. I guess what it was we had gone to Emerson together. We came up in Emerson College together, and when we left the institution, the kind of workshop sessions and critique sessions that you get when you're a student like very quickly go away. And so Boston, we're blessed with Lef and Dockyard and a very vibrant documentary community, and so a lot of us were seeing each other at the same events. We would be at the same places, but the kind of the messiness was that there was no formalized kind of works in progress screenings. There was a great group which we met a lot of filmmakers at called Connect the Docs, which was doing it actually in this room. So the Nonfiction Cartel literally started in this room, like as an idea. And what we found was there was wonderful people doing wonderful work, but they were way more experienced than we were. They were in their 8th year of a documentary. They were in their 5th year of a documentary, and we were kind of plopping ourselves in this kind of world that has been churning for a long time. And so we were, not to say that we weren't a part of the conversations, they appreciated our feedback, but what we wanted was a kind of formalized monthly critique session and support group. So mainly that was the idea. And so it started, and we were thinking of the practicality of what we could do then. And a lot of us, it's not an age thing, it's just a matter of where we were in our careers. And so it's mainly for emerging filmmakers, people who are just starting out, or people who are just leaving colleges, or are in, they have a career change and they want to start making documentaries. Mainly it's a way, and so shorts, we decided on shorts mainly. We're a little bit moving away from that right now, but it at least started with shorts, and the reason why is because they're practical and they're a little bit more cost effective than feature documentaries, and the time frame is a little bit more manageable than the projects that take years and years and years. And mainly it was practice for us. We were just starting out, and so I actually learned, Rob was a former professor of mine, and so it was mainly a way of honing our craft, and it was mainly a way of kind of learning together.
And how many people come, would you say, to your?
There's 14 members, but mainly we reserve about 10 slots. And it's because we don't have a space, and we have it in people's living rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And so just as a way of making the meetings not be 5 hours long every single time we meet, we have about 10 people come, and then about 4 or 5 of those can show what they're working on. So that was why it started.
All right. Rob.
Okay, well that's Stefan. You see Stefan over there. He's part of my answer.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that. You're part of my answer, actually. So I'm not sure, we have a listserv, and in our early formation, we decided to set up this listserv, and I think I don't know how many members there are on that. You would know, like 75?
37.
37, okay. So 37 on the listserv, just plugging
No, 37 committed members, much more on the listserv.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's a listserv that has a number of people who see what we're doing, they chime in and stuff, and then we have 37 members officially. And at our meetings, we have anywhere between a dozen to maybe 15, 18 people in a room at any given time. And those are steering meetings that we have. Again, I'm going to blame Stefan a little bit and you here, because in Boston, we had this Boston Film Video Foundation that dissolved. And they had an educational component that was great. They had video editing facilities that were great. They had film editing facilities, equipment, a screening room, meeting areas, a grants office, if I remember right. They ran a film festival, and it was a very sad loss for this community to have that disappear. And many people who are new to Boston don't even know that this thing even existed. And as Eric has said, my interest in starting something was to meet a need like what you're talking about for people who wanted to continue making films after they've gotten out of either high school or college or whatever. They've been exposed to materials. The institutions have those. A lot of people don't have those. It's very expensive and also very rare to use actually analog film equipment. So a bunch of us got together, and this is where I'm going to blame Stefan, is because Stefan used to have has had work in progress screenings in his living room, same kind of thing, for a number of more experimental artists. And there'd always been a building need for this, and the Boston Center for the Arts never really was able to provide that. And I love the name Boston Center for the Arts, but they don't really exist as Boston Center for the Arts. They exist as their own little thing. So we got together, and we found a lot of people had this common interest to have, as Jen was saying, like an analog darkroom, for example. So we have now film processing that you can do still and motion picture stuff. We have work in progress screenings. We have workshop events that we do in all sort of handmade stuff. But it's not purely analog. At the work in progress screenings, most of the pieces that are presented are on digital. And it's a chance for people who are really super indie, not indie, but like super DIY, I guess is the way I think of, who are really into the handmade mode of making, to get together, have facilities to work with, which we have in Waltham, and to be able to screen and share ideas with, sort of grow. So that's it. We're also thinking about distribution in a minor way, because we're just really new. This is our 1-year anniversary is coming up. We're really happy that we're surviving. We had a crowdfunding thing to get us going. And we are, I think, have been open to the idea of potentially partnering with other things. So Non-Event has had some things with Stefan and Balagan, because we're like a subset of Balagan, which is a screening organization, screens at different venues around Boston.
So just keeping track of all these organizations.
Yes.
Just curious.
Good.
So one of the questions that I would have is, in forming your collectives, maybe what are the unexpected things that have arisen for you in putting this together. It's sort of like you went with a certain thing in mind, and reality may have turned out to be a little different than you had initially anticipated. And so I'm kind of curious if, in terms of the original purpose, that, you know, what might have been the biggest learning experience or change that might have happened out of forming this collective. Maybe we'll start this time. Do you want to start and come down this way?
Yeah, I mean, we're only a year old, so our mission really hasn't changed at all. I'm sure we'll hit a wall somewhere. We've talked about the idea of scale, which was listed here. Is that sometimes we're trying to figure out how do we anticipate an increase in scale, like how would our facilities, but this is all pie in the sky stuff. Like thinking about that is, I don't know, to me, not important. I think organizationally, our biggest problem has been accounting. And I mentioned this to the Boston Foundation is that, you know, when a startup happens and it's like super ghetto like we are, we don't really have places to turn for like free support for things like accounting. I'm trying to pull the stops out on some things right now, but that's been the most difficult thing, is to figure out how the membership is formally structured and how finances work.
So you,
right?
at this point, you haven't actually totally figured out how your membership is structured? You're working on
No,
that?
we have it structured. It's just been the most difficult thing that we've had to deal with, is how do we keep track of membership dues payments, because we're dues driven. I mean, it's cheap. Even scaling the amount of dues based on like the idea that I said, like we want people who are recent graduates or people who don't have money to be able to do this. You know, I mean, I think there's a big thing about a problem of people getting into media and then they come out of these institutions, and it's like, well, how do I continue my practice? How do I do it? And rent is so expensive, and I gotta have these jobs, and how could I possibly think about paying money to rent equipment or a space or whatever? So part of what we're trying to do is to keep things working so that people won't have to pay exorbitant dues to be part of this. So, I mean, that's where we're at. I mean, that's where my mind's at anyway with this organization. It's like, how do we make it so that it stays cheap and gets cheaper? So I think, and in terms of the organizational structure, one thing that we've resisted is having a president or a head, you know, board. I mean, fortunately, we're under Balagon, so we can be very loose about how we report. You know, invariably, the only person who's really, people have to step on that plate, up to the plate to do the work. So the only real troubled area is the treasury area, which is why I keep focusing on this is where the organizational part is. The other things we haven't really dealt with is we don't have a formal outreach office. We don't like do that kind of stuff. We have to do it individually. We have a lot of committed members though. So right now we're functioning very well because we have a lot of great volunteerism that's starting to contribute to forward momentum.
Well, we have a membership fee, which is very, very small, but none of our members are paid, and we don't have any kind of system set up for payment, or when there's a skill share or when there's an equipment share or anything like that. And so it is an all volunteer effort, which, as like many people in the doc world know, it's just like there's, how many emails do we get of like, can you help on the film? Well, we don't have any money. Like, we're gonna have money eventually if this grant comes through. And it's kind of, that in and of itself, it really kind of wears on you after a while. And so to ask members, at least for us anyways, there was the initial support system, workshop session, skill share, and then also like equipment share. And that was our main focus. But from the get-go, we also wanted outreach to be a huge part of what we did. Mainly, it's because we didn't want to upset the vibrant community that was already here, like the wonderful festival that's here, and LEF and DER, and a lot of filmmakers collaborative, people who were been doing this for way longer than we have. Like, we wanted to partner with them. We wanted to help them out in what they were already doing, or to try to add our flair to it if we could. And I think we have like started to chip away at that a little bit, but I guess that outreach, the problems that we didn't foresee is the kind of, you're really asking people to go above and beyond by not only asking them to contribute their time separate from a full-time job or needing to make money, or whatever family stuff they have going on, to also, you know, it's like it's a weekend day and, you know, you've worked all week, and then you're asking them to plan a party with you. You're asking them to watch 20 films for a film festival. You're asking them to come and work on your film. It's a big ask. And so we're trying to think about, is there a way that money can be a part of it? Does it need to be a part of it? We would love for there not to be, but it's just like, I don't think anybody really has cracked that kind of sustainability model. And unfortunately, it's just like, especially in the documentary world, it's like, it's just the name of the game right now. It's just like, there's money up here, and then there's everybody down here. It's like all kind of vying for it. But if there was a way to come up with some kind of model that didn't require that in order to have this like ecosystem of giving and volunteering and giving your skills and presenting. That's where we're at. And so it's the outreach. It's like the outreach that's kind of the where our focus is going to be.
Interesting. Just
Yeah, I feel like I'm, well, so much to say about New Day in that context, but with Film Fatales, it's similar. I mean, we vamped our whole website and created databases of local chapters and all of that. You know, the money is sort of confusing of where it's all going to come from. And also just time. And I'll just say that it took me a while to start this chapter in Boston, in part because I'm a new mom. And so actually what happened in New York is we had all the new moms like couldn't make it to this 7 p.m. dinner party because we were all had new kids. So we started this group called Docu Mamas. And we were like, wah! And then we met on Sundays with our kids. And then, then I moved to Boston and there weren't a ton of new mom documentary filmmakers. So I said, okay, I'm going to do this. And now my kid is 3 and I can do it. So part of it was also like trying to figure out that stuff has been really interesting. Time and, you know, there's a lot of back end work that falls in my lap. And
So I actually have one specific question about Film Fatale in relation to women in film and video.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems to me that impetus for women in film and video was very much the same.
Right.
So why the new organization?
Well, I mean, I guess I sort of brought it. I've been friends with the person who started it, and this is, it's different in that it's an intimate dinner party. It's not meant to be, you know, a structural organization with all this other stuff. I don't know if there's 501c3, you know, it's not meant to be that. It's meant to be more of a networking event that can also offshoot into other organizations. So, I mean, maybe you would know more about that because it feels like there has been a need for it in Boston, and the events are pretty popular, so that's great. But I don't know the scene as much as you do. So, but it seems like it's a different thing, and it's more of an umbrella for other organizations.
Yeah, I actually, you should actually go. I would have some things to say too. Go ahead.
Well, our challenge is, having been around New Day, being around for 45 years, which
Do you
is
have paid staff, actually?
No.
Okay. No.
Well, we do have one. We have one paid staff. We have a central office.
Okay.
Actually, it's operating out of someone's house at this point. That all the orders go through this person, and she relays them to a shipping office, and we subcontract to them, and they do our fulfillment. In other words, all of our films that we rent out and sell and all that go through the shipping office, and our point person is an employee.
Okay.
So we also have a part. Anyway, let me just backtrack. Some of the challenges over 45 years. God, this seems like ancient history. We started out with 16 millimeter film, and so we were all making film, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, VHS, and so we had to do this huge mind shift to distributing in VHS, and then oh my God, DVDs. And then in 2008, we realized that in order to be current and to be able to distribute, we have to go into digital and streaming and all that. So we had to basically have people help us invent how do you stream films, because in 2008 there wasn't a lot of streaming, and also protect the films. In other words, you don't want them showing up on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. So we've had technological challenges, but we've also had growth challenges. I mean, going from 4 people to 10 people, we'd meet in someone's living room. The person who talked the loudest or the longest would often be the one whose voice got heard. And it was like, that was okay. We were able to manage till we had maybe 20. And then we realized this doesn't work. Everybody can't talk all the time, and we can't have, I mean, kind of general consensus, but we're not going to make everybody happy all the time. So we had to come up with another structure. Now that we have 100, our fear was, what happens if we grow? Oh my God, we're going to grow. And that was a huge crisis, particularly since we had so many applicants. There are so many filmmakers that did not want to go with commercial distributors where they'd get 20% of net and had no control over the distribution of their film, over the marketing of their film, over the, being able to make concessions so it could go to women's groups or, well, now we have films of all social issues. And so the question was, how do we manage that? So someone came up with the idea of, let's get a facilitator. And it was like, oh God, no. Being all independent type A personalities, how do you have a facilitator to come in and tell you something? So we decided to try it once. So we started out with this couple, and they came in, and all of a sudden, our meetings were wonderful. It was like having Mom run the meeting, and we would do the agenda, we would tell them exactly what the issues were. They would run the meeting and call on us in order. And people weren't yelling. And I mean, it's amazing that now having a meeting of 100 and some odd people, and the people, the emails, that was a fabulous meeting. We meet annually for 4 days, all the active members, for a 4-day retreat. And
sorry, but it's also a participatory democracy. So
right.
There's a scale of agreement. So like you could disagree, but business still happens because you vote. I either really like it or I like it, but I have reservations. So you're voting on a spectrum.
Right.
So it's brilliant because you can argue, and then all of a sudden it just gets silent, and then you just do this like vote, and then okay, now we go to the hot tub.
Right.
It's like it's quite
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
with 100 opinionated
Yeah.
filmmakers in the room.
Yeah. No. The other issue is one of keeping our values, because we started out as social issue documentaries, participatory democracy, and one other issue was money. Always an issue, and that is how do you share, because some films are longer than other films, some filmmakers make more films, so we had to come up with a share ladder that where we tried to create fairness within the system so that people who earned more pay more in, but they can't be carrying the whole load for the entire co-op, where somebody whose film is hardly making anything doesn't pay anything. That's not fair. Another challenge that we have is jobs. Who does the work of the co-op? Because in order for us to be able to make money as filmmakers, which most filmmakers don't, is you have to do your own work. So somebody has to do the website, somebody has to do the outreach, somebody has to do the catalog, the business, the accounting, and all that kind of stuff. So every member in New Day has a job to do, and that keeps our costs down. But one of the issues is, well, how do you make sure that everybody does their job? And that anyway, these are some of our issues that we've had to grapple with,
So how did
and have solved, sort of.
So how did I'm interested because you're the longest. How did that structure emerge? How did you actually figure that out?
Inventing the wheel just as we go along. It's like, okay, we have a problem here. What's amazing is we have so many smart people. And people come up with, well, how about this? And people will submit proposals. It's like, I think the way to deal with this issue is this, and someone will, add on to that. And so before our annual meeting, everybody who has an idea of some big change will submit a proposal or an idea and say, I think we need to change this. I think we need to do that. And these things come up at the annual meeting. And also we have a steering committee now, where we vote on the steering committee. And they handle the day-to-day business, just during the year, and they meet once a year in December, January. Our annual meeting is in June, July. So, but we're constantly solving problems. I mean, that's the nature of it.
Can I say something? I forgot to say something. I think our biggest challenge was that when we first met, we started having to define who we were. And that was really interesting because we didn't know the scope that people wanted to go develop this towards. We didn't know the avenues that people wanted to have, like distribution. Some people wanted that, some people didn't. Some people wanted to define us as analog, some people didn't. And we had to sort of somehow figure out that we could be a roof for all these people and believe in ourselves is actually what it ended up being. But that was really interesting, and it's going to be curious to me how we end up carrying through that. But there was something else. Oh yeah, I think in terms of our outreach, one of our biggest problems is this is a club. This is a club. These are clubs, and a lot is like we're not a club. We just want people to know that we're here and they can come to our meetings and join in. And it's not like we're an exclusive bunch of people that just like ourselves. It's more like, no, we're offering these services for people. That's a big thing to want to get out so that it's an open membership.
Sorry.
Okay.
Well, it's almost the what you were hinting at before, with that women in film may also share the same kind of mission of film fatales. It's kind of like it's hard to really pinpoint. It's not as if the Boston community is trying to vie for like a certain piece of the puzzle, that there only is this piece, and if there's one women's group, there can't be another women's group. Right. It's like, I've learned, at least for me anyways, like it's almost, people are doing things out of necessity, and they're doing things in like the spare time, and mostly their volunteer efforts, especially in the doc world. And it's like, they're trying to focus on one thing and like do that thing really well. And it's not like they don't also want you to help out somehow, or to partner with you, or to work with you in the future, but it's like, it's really hard to just do this one thing. And so it's just like, I've had the experience of kind of outreach with like film festivals, for example. It's like they have a really hard job that they're trying to do really well. And it's like they love what you're doing, they really want to support you, and they have, but at the same time, it's like they're so firm in their goal, and it's hard to just do that one thing, that it's like, it's not, I feel like it's a Boston thing, kind of. Like, it's just like it's out of necessity. So what I meant to say is like, it's not like there's any kind of malice. Or at least for me, I haven't experienced, or there's any kind of like, like shoulder, trying to push somebody, what are you trying to do? It's just like, it's mainly just because of time and money. That it's just like.
I would say the thing, just from my experience over the years at BFF, was that the issue a little bit when we talk about scale, it's if you look at the history, the trajectory of what that organization went through. It started out with a couple people, it was Susan Wall and John Rubin, I think, right, who started out. And then there were a number of people. Leanne was part of that founding group, and then eventually it got its first paid staff member, and it was a time. And then it got to a point where the organization had about 10 paid staff, and it probably brought together a lot of these small organizations, and so it actually created a collective of collectives in a little bit. So a lot of the people that you would see, they would come through, and I think yesterday it was actually kind of wonderful to see. There were people here who were presenting their films who had volunteered for the festival, and you kind of see this pathway. So this question of how the connections between these various pockets of things that go on, and how do you create visibility for the entire community? So I think the interesting question is, you each have your individual needs, but then when you want to do outreach, where does that's a common goal. So that's one thing. When we got together, one thing we knew is we wanted to have a space so that everybody could go to a nice space, and it's great. It's got couches, it's got a screening area, it's got work areas, there's a kitchen-y thing. It's like ready for parties, basically it's ready for you guys. It's ready for your living room thing, it's ready for this. Like BFF kind of was in a way, and I have this idea that would be great. To have that, so that's a hosting spot and a sort of a nexus for people to do their stuff. And I definitely want us to go do outreach with high schools and run high school workshops and have high school kids come in and work with local museums and say, hey, look, these are workshops that we offer uniquely. But that's just, we offer them uniquely, but it's for them to come and like do the stuff. I think having this is, when you said Boston, I'm like nodding, because of course like, that's the problem with Boston. Boston in space, it's like oil and vinegar, or, oil and water. They just forget it. It's like, we want to do these great things, but it doesn't mix with the space issues that are involved here. There's space issues, and then people are very much in silos in the different institutions they are. Right. And it's very rare that there's a huge amount of crossover.
Yeah, that's why I hate that Boston Center for the Arts thing. I can't rail on them far enough, because what a name, Boston Center for the Arts. Like, all the arts should be coming out of that. And yet, it's like the cyclorama, There's a theater that's like, you buy tickets to go. I mean, it's like, what is that place?
Well,
Jesse,
just adding to this, one thing is, this was started in New York, and I lived in New York for 20 years, and people never go to each other's houses. Like, there's never space. You don't have a dinner table. Like, I can say maybe I've had 5 dinner parties in like 17 years in my little control apartment. So it was like a really big deal to say, like, let's actually meet in each other's homes. And you go in, it's like people sitting on the floor. There's fold-out chairs. There's borrowed chairs from the neighbor. Like, it's not one thing that Boston does seem to do really well is like people have each other over for dinner, which is awesome. So it's kind of a natural fit here. And there it was like, this is like this secret society of we're breaking the rules of, seeing each other's houses or whatever. But one thing I just want to say is overall, I feel like what everybody's trying to do is kind of, look at the film industry. It's, usually you feel like everybody's in competition, and, with New Day, it's built into the business model that you promote each other's films, because if I promote her film and she does well, my shares go down. There's economic incentive to like help each other out. And also with Film Fatales, it's like taking women, and the stereotype is that everybody's like, women are vying for the same tiny little piece of the pie or whatever. And here it is, we're actually trying to like break that down at a ground level in each other's houses to say, like, actually I want to help you make your film. And so it's, it's a very different model. And I think by nature filmmakers are collaborative, and then we're put in this position sometimes that we're like vying for the crumbs, and it's nice to be in an alternative situation. That's all.
Should we open the questions up to, are there questions that people have, things that,
Can I add just
that guy.
one thing?
Yes.
Just one thing I wanted to add, and that is, particularly for newer co-ops, is what I've noticed over the years with co-ops is often you have a charismatic leader. We were talking about this earlier. And what happens when the charismatic leaders are no longer either that active or want to carry on? How does your co-op survive the originators and the same ideas, and yet keep growing and changing? And one of the things that I've seen in New Day, which is like the most amazing and heartwarming thing, we're probably in our 4th or 5th iteration of leaders in New Day, steering committee and chair of the steering committee and all that kind of thing. And somehow it still works. And somehow I think that what co-ops have to do is build in some way to perpetuate themselves without it only being the point person to continue doing that. And that's a problem. I don't know that we've solved it forever, because there's always going to be issues, but I think it is something that newer co-ops have to think about.
Well, I think mainly you have to have smart people. So you only let in smart people.
And generous, of spirit.
Well, this is something that we said from the beginning, is that we don't want a presidency, and we don't want that kind of thing. And we've been very fortunate that we've had like this ridiculous amount of volunteerism on these people who are years apart. Frank's here, others. It's like crazy. But it's a group that is vibrant, and it could be that you get a bunch of people who come in that are like, no. And then you're like, oh, well, there was the organization. But for us right now, it's great, because that's one of the things that brought us together, was we're all eager to do it. But it's true, you need the mechanism in place. And that's why I'm freaked out about the academy.
I think some of the interesting part about making those things work also really has to do with keeping in mind the scale at which you want to operate. Because if you want to just keep growing, then you can outgrow. You can volunteer for so long and get burned out. Or, so how do you actually make sure that you maintain the energy, and that it doesn't fall on just a few people, and that you can actually keep the leadership fresh too, and changing, and how you build that into your DNA. And
well, one thing, we started off with this idea that we would have working groups. And so it wouldn't just be one person doing work that, our treasury is a rotating responsibility according to us. We haven't really done it well yet, but we've got 4 of us on that. And then, if someone's going to drop out, someone else can replace that. And then our finance thing that we were looking at, the grants writing, is how many of us are there? 7 or something who were supposed to be. Yeah, so the idea of the dark room also is operated by one major player that has other people who are involved with that. I think Mike's here. Mike, you in the dark room? Are you in the dark room?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like there are groups of people who are doing it, rather than if one person's out, that's it. We're sort of screwed. And there's that whole idea of institutional memory that comes in working groups too.
So was there a question back there? Yeah.
Actually, my name's Scott Anderson. I used to
Hi,
teach
Scott.
at
Yeah, I
IFFBoston.
know. Hi, Scott.
And I also taught at Emerson Business and Screenwriting. And I was curious how many people use their skill sets in other venues to make money. In other words, if you write and edit a doc, are you writing and editing a promo piece for your local pizza parlor for their website? Because there's certainly more work doing that type of thing than there is writing feature films. I also ran Harvard Square Script Writers for 15 or 16 years, which is now run by Janine Tillotson. And we faced all of the issues that you're talking about in terms of finding facilities to meet at. We met at Harvard for over 20 years before I took over as well. And the Boston Center for the Arts hosted us for 3 years, plus hosted most of the LA screenwriting consultants who would come in and run weekend seminars. So I thought Boston Center for the Arts has been really great.
I'm just saying that they are what they are, that you can meet there, but they're not going to offer you like a chance to build out a darkroom, for example, or
Well, that's
new
true.
facilities. They don't partner in that way. That makes it. I mean, we know because Balagon actually. There was Marina Kafarova was one of the people. Is she the president of Balagon?
Technically.
Yeah, she worked at Boston Center for the Arts, and getting screenings to happen there was like pulling teeth. They did it in the gallery. It's not the same as like what BFBF was.
Oh no, it's not the same as BFF.
Yeah.
We all miss
They
BFF.
they
On our
had
better days.
not office space, but kind of workshop space farther down from the cyclorama. And in there they had potters, they had painters.
Yeah, they have a dance studio.
Yeah.
Like they have all those
and
things.
they did have facilities where you could set up some things. I'm not sure about the reasons for the darkroom that done, but I do know they did have other things. But my real question was, going back, how have you worked out the organizational things? And have you gotten in touch with somebody like Janine Tillotson?
How have they worked out the organizational what?
The organizational issues of, well, when you're talking about accounting, for instance, if you're working in film, you need to have, an accounting system set up, because ultimately it is about money. And then have you actually gone out and used your skill sets in making, videos for pizza parlors?
Or
The answer.
what's your
I'm not
day
gonna
job?
say- Yeah. I mean, we're committed to not making money. If that's what you're saying. Yeah, I mean that's how it's DIY. It's for people who basically, America's a weird place because what you said is what is kind of that's what we're forced to do. There's where there are limited pools are for individual artist grants and for people to actually be funded, to make their, like you're saying, it's like there's this pool up here, and then the rest of us are scrapping around trying to figure out what kind of day job stuff are going to pay the bills. But I think our collective is not really interested in doing that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are. I think the idea was that we were just trying to be supportive in the way that we're forced to be amateurs, really, at this level. And I don't think we're designed to promote skill sets that will get people jobs necessarily, but that may be some ancillary thing. I mean, my personal philosophy is that if you're involved in the arts, then you're kind of you're dealing with sacrifice, yes, but you're dealing with a mindset, like a whole way of being that is really distinctive, that is kind of, it's different than the idea of commercial arts production. And so, from my point of view, that's what we're involved with. This organization is oriented towards arts-oriented production. So we have people working in nonfiction documentary at our work in progress screening, and where they're looking to show is basically at a museum. So the way that those skills transfer is really across media. It's not necessarily across jobs. Now, in terms of the accounting, we have some people who have experience in accounting within the organization. We're just trying to figure out what's the best nonprofit accounting model for us at this point. And it's really keeping track of memberships. That's mainly the thing. We have a very set of expenses, and we've done a crowdfunding thing. We're looking for grants. So all those things are part of, that's folded into this idea. We have a finance committee and a grants committee, and it's committee work, and that's how we're trying to get it through. It's like having those minds come together, bring their experience to it, bring other kinds of minds from outside in if it's needed. that's
So,
how we were doing it.
Jesse, you had something to add?
No, well, I'll just say that the structure, it's a little bit different because the goal isn't to actually as an organization work together to make films. But it's a networking tool. So, but one thing I'll just say, we do have interns, and a lot of our interns have come from Emerson, which has been awesome. And those interns are typically younger female filmmakers who want extra mentorship, and so it's, the goal is to sort of help them in other ways. But I just wanted to say there's two people in the audience, Maya and Monica, who met through Film Fatales and are working together and hosted the last dinner. So do you guys want to say anything about the structure? Because I wasn't even there, and that was a really good sign that, I'm not like a leader, I'm just a facilitator of this process.
I mean, that first meeting was pretty amazing. There was women that I knew, but then there were so many women that I didn't know, and working in different genres, and that's kind of how I met Maya, 'cause she's an animator, and I do documentary, and I kind of know all the documentary filmmakers, but I love seeing all the generations of women, and I thought it was great that Film Fatales was so welcoming to the young women that were students that were like, well, you can be interns and help us, and it was a great entry point, which actually was going to be my question to all of you, and because I was a member of Women in Film and Video, and I'm a member of IFFBoston, the National Association of Latino Independent Producers, has had a New England chapter for years, but it's basically been like asleep for a couple of years. And all of those have served me and served the community at different points, but it was like different people kind of steering it, and then it dropped off. So I thought Film Fatales was kind of exciting for women filmmakers in Boston, and that it was something new. And there's a pretty good entry point that it's like word of mouth. And Women in Film and Video used to have a great entry point. They used to have a mentor program, which is how I came into it as a first-time filmmaker. And every bit of success and support I got in Boston in making my first film started with that mentor program. And I guess,
That's awesome.
so Film Fatales is new and filling a void, I think, because of the state of the industry, which you even see in this festival. There's not enough women directors. There's not enough people of color. And I think there's a lot to do, but that's what it's serving, to promote the voices and create community, because it is still such a boys' club, especially as you get into the power structures. But I guess I wonder what the points of entry are for your organizations. And then the second part is, like, how would you like to see it grow beyond the needs individually, but serving the greater community, film community of Boston?
That's a great question.
Oh, I don't know if I have an answer. I had another comment though.
Well, what is your point of entry to do New Day? Like, how do people,
Filmmakers apply. Anyone
how
can
do they
apply.
know about you?
Anybody who sort of has gone to festivals or is sort of in the independent community, I mean, there's so many of us now that a lot of people have heard of us, and we've been around long enough that usually when people think of self-distribution, it's like, oh, have you thought about New Day? And they'll mention a couple of other distributors, or doing it yourself. But I was going to mention about income and what do artists and filmmakers do, and it's a perennial problem. Most documentary filmmakers don't get rich. However, how many people in New Day actually can make a living off their films? Maybe
I mean, doesn't it
10%?
change? Like,
Yeah, it
is
changes.
at
It depends on whether your
times-
film is hot.
And certain times,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I've lived in the woods and I could live off.
Right,
But
right.
that's because I was.
So what happens is that most people in New Day have another job. I mean,
Right.
they're an editor, a sound person, a
Yep.
professor, a teacher, or something like that.
Yep.
But what's really interesting, I think, is, and it's true in most of the organizations, is that people know of other people's skills. And I don't know how many people in New Day have hired another New Day member as their editor, their sound person, their camera person, and all that. So you're getting a sort of a secondary benefit out of being a member of any group, is that it's the networking, and in terms of filmmaking, it's income.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's unique about Boston that actually gave rise to this community was the confluence of all of the educational institutions, plus WGBH is one of the big producing stations. So there are people that we know who spent their time being editors and then doing their own work, and there are people who are teaching who then do their own work. And then there are some other kinds of commercial jobs, but there was never much of a narrative community here so much, and commercial kind of came and went, I
Yeah.
think, with depending on the economic conditions, and in some cases some of the policy issues that, you know, so seeing the Mass Production Coalition being active really helped support creating that kind of community too, and more broadly. But this question about in terms of growth, I think, is a really interesting question. Like, what is it that you would want? What do you think it is that Boston would need for your groups individually or more broadly?
Well, I guess, like, it's always something that really vexes me, that the point that you're bringing up, or that I feel like you're bringing up, is that in the big scheme of growth, there's almost two directions that you could go, and it really does have to do with the necessity that we all have to make money at the same time. I mean, like, I don't know, like, of really any documentary filmmakers, like, at least in my circle of friends, who are able to just make documentary films, even super successful ones. Like, maybe Frederick Wiseman down the street, or like Errol Morris over in Inman can, but he does commercials. No, exactly. And their advice to all of us, like, if you are lucky enough to see them talk, is like, do commercials, marry rich, like don't do what you're doing, essentially. And so it's like, but I hate to think that the paradigm is then either become a production company, do what many other people have done before you. That is to say, you've amassed the amount of expertise where you can offer your services. A lot of us are editors in the cartel, like, mostly we're post-production people. There's people who are doing shooting, like a lot of cinematography. Either that's the one route, or kind of start to look for sponsors and start to look for what IFFB does, and kind of go the 501c3 route, which is, once again, there's a pool of money up there that many other wonderful people are trying to get in Boston, and just kind of throw your chips on the table and see if you're able to get them. I hate to think that those are the two options.
Well,
that
there's a third option. There's a $0 option. I mean, I think that, you know, we're the $0 option, and what I mean by that is that there is a way in which, I mean, maybe it's just me, I'm an ideological asshole or something, just like that.
But you're consistent, Rob.
Yeah, consistent. No, it's like, you know, this idea of sharing resources, like, we don't need $100,000 to make certain kinds of movies, and that there is a way in which our support for each other keeps expenses down, as you're saying, like through volunteerism, sharing equipment, and all that kind of stuff. I think there's another route in a lot of this, which is to also have zero rent costs, like a city that actually supports like a $0 rent situation for nonprofits, and you know, people who actually get companies to donate equipment to groups like that to make it so so then your expenses really are like somebody who's involved with maintenance and some bookkeeping, like, for your thing, and then people actually see the arts as something that is not really, you have to get into the club of people who can get a lot of money to make their movie. You know, I think this is the outreach that I want to do, is like to be able to say to people who are 15 and 16, it's like, you know, outside of using your phone to make movies, there are ways that people will support you to make higher end kinds of movies, or like some arts oriented practice that's kind of something that you can pursue, that's performative and that is beautiful and sort of amazing, that can change the way that we see things, all that kind of stuff. Like, as you know, art schools put a lot of emphasis on that kind of way of seeing and making work, and you know, it'd just be great if the community could actually support that.
Right.
So in terms of nonfiction, I know it's different because you've got a lot of things like travel expenses and all that kind of stuff, but that's the other thing in the experimental community, is there's a lot of international support for people. We have a couch for you. We have, you know, ways of having things happen for you in this country that are also going to keep your expenses down if it's shared across the country between New York and Boston and stuff too. So I think some of this idea of sharing resources, I think, is something that can expand outwards beyond even sort of, you know, the vision of how do we network and help each other get jobs.
You were raising it.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of add to what Rob was saying. I think outside of our collective, I think if it hadn't formed, a lot of us, because we are really arts focused and totally non-commercially focused in what we're doing, and while some of us might work in related fields to make money, what we're doing is purely on the arts. I think we would be doing this without being a collective. We would still be trying to make work. And so coming together just kind of facilitates and makes this easier, but it's not necessary to do it. We're driven to do it because we're driven by the urge to create art, and film is our medium. So,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just thinking about, like, you know, some things that we've talked about is who can donate computers, right? It's this sort of classic after-school thing, just taken to another level. So a guy from Cameroon actually asked me about donating, like, can we donate these HD cameras that we're not using, which I love, these Panasonic HMC 150s. They're great HD cameras, perfect for documentary work. 10 of these cameras might go to him, and they're free. But like here in Boston, it's like nobody's asking for those cameras, they just throw them in the trash. So I just, that's what I'm sort of getting at, is I think there are people who are here that's like another step that this can go. That you organize, like you're talking about accounting, someone who's savvy with doing that stuff, like a producer who's like, let's get these to the collectives that, you know, actually might need them. Your group, certainly, the living room people's like, hey, you know, we can get all this stuff too. You know, I don't know, this is just ways I'm thinking about this stuff.
I think one of the, through my experience at BFEF, one of the things that was interesting when it got to that scale, it had the documentary plus the narrative plus the experimental plus the, so it was actually a place, because all of those different communities came in and out, they were connected to each other in a way that I think the loss of that organization, I think, has impacted Boston in that way. So the interesting part is, you know, I think the way, if documentary people were seeing experimental work, or how many people in documentary now use animation, and where do those people get to know each other, and where do they see each other's work, and how do you actually create a fabric that brings those particular threads together? And I think that, so the question, when you see these little things that are happening, you know, in individual pockets, then the question becomes, how do you actually, how on a broader scale, the people you don't know, the people you don't see, and who's actually actively bringing those different communities together. So they come out of the schools, but probably a lot of the people you know are from Emerson, right? Or maybe not the people from Harvard, maybe not the people from Mass Art, or, you know, so where are the venues, or how do we actually then collectively create those spaces?
Well, I mean, obviously, I just said what I said, but I think the animation meetup happened at Harvard recently, and that's like 40 people are involved in the animation meetup, and it happened during the day at a place, I don't know where it was, but it did used to happen in our space. And I think it'd be great to do it. But what you're saying, in a way, it made me think that, you know, shouldn't Julie Burroughs actually be calling on, you know, shouldn't the Boston City actually be calling on us to gather, right? People who know that we exist, like, this is great, hi. I think having those kind of gatherings would be great. You know, things that people, this is just for, and I just said the animation meetup, I don't know who's dealing with that. And you know, the women in film and whoever, I think it'd be interesting if we all did have some way of saying, hey, what can we share? It has to be someone outside of us, unless, because we're all in our own little pies. Exactly. And I know you guys now have something to talk about. Like, what about that experimental guy who's like, whatever, I don't know about it. but you know, if we're together, then maybe some things might
the $0 option.
and Film Fatales is like international. There's a chapter in Rio. I mean, I think one of the strengths is this database that's growing, because it's like, you know, it's tracking films that are being made and films that have already been made, and so, you know, hopefully that information can get to programmers, and then, yeah, it's not just in terms of gender, it's tracked in terms of diversity and all these different ways, and so it's really trying to, you know, elevate films that maybe might not be programmed so much, so that it's like a direct, you know, targeting programmers and making access.
But I think Anne-Marie's saying, like, if you have animation that you want, don't you guys want to have an animation meetup visit, like, to those guys to see, like, all the wacky animation things?
The other thing is that there's guests that come to these meetings, and there's also events, there's parties, there's, you know, there's, like, we'll have an animation meetup hosted by Film Fatales, and then, you know, so it's not just these dinner parties, it's a larger, what is it, like those meetup at Tribeca.
We do that, but because we're national, we do it on sort of a different scale. But for each of our meetings, we'll usually call in experts, you know, what's the next thing in digital? You know, how do we handle that? You know, what's the best way to market, you know, with social media? And so we'll bring in experts to our meeting to talk to us about how to do that. The other way that we sort of communicate and job share and all that is, I'm always amazed when I see our emails. It's like, does anybody know a camera person in Kenya? Or I need a fixer in, you know, Nairobi, you know, and stuff like that. So we're always sort of communicating, not only within the group, but outside the group as well. And the pool of talent is amazing. But we do often look for outside people. It's just on a different, it's not a local, well, sometimes it's local. Who knows? I'm coming to Boston, you know, how do I find, you know, a good venue for my film, or what's a good theater to shoot in New York and stuff like that. I mean, the advantage of us is that we have people all over the place, but it's not necessarily, you know, sort of, how do we meet a group locally?
Let's do it. You're all invited.
Yeah. That guy in the back.
Are there other questions?
Yeah, he's got a question.
Yes?
I had a question just for Film Vitalis. I was just wondering if you had any members that were either non-binary identifying or trans.
So the definition that is you have to self-identify as a woman, whatever that means. So the answer is yes.
Okay.
So.
How much time do we have, by the way?
You can keep going for another like 15 minutes.
Okay. Other questions? There was another hand? Yes.
It was more like a comment. I'm also a Film Vital member, and yeah, in the few months that I've been a part of it, it's actually been really beneficial for me. And I met someone who's collaborating on my film now, and I've been offered jobs as a result of it, and like all this stuff has happened, and I'm new to Boston, so for me it was like integral for me to feel connected to peers or even mentors, rather than students, because I connect with students a lot, but I'm not gonna like network with my students. So, I mean, I'm just super grateful that Jesse and Rebecca started this, and I found out about grants that I never knew about, like all these resources, and there are a lot of resources, but I guess some of it's just like what you know hits you, or what you know somebody told. I asked my friends in New York to introduce me to interesting people in Boston, and one of my friends like introduced me to Rebecca, and so this is like, you know, how do filmmakers and animators? I'm an animator. How do I find, you know, how do we find each other? And sometimes I think it's a generational thing. It's like my friend knew this person who started it, so.
And I guess, could I just add to one thing? Because one thing is that, I've been to all these women's film festivals, and as a filmmaker, I tend to kind of try to sort of ignore gender. Like, I'm like, I don't want to pay attention to this. Like, I just want to keep going. So it has been really interesting and challenging to try to, like, kind of co-start this chapter here that's all women, and so it's challenging my assumptions of like, what my goals are. But it is true. I mean, it is true that it's, it is helpful to have this network where people are hiring each other, and the context is women. But I don't know, just thought I'd throw that out there, that it's interesting. That's all.
Do people actually use newenglandfilm.com does anybody use that?
I don't.
I'm on their list, but I don't know that I've ever been contacted by anyone. But I don't know.
Right.
You don't know.
Yeah. So it's more like the question is who's vetting and
It's sort of like a database.
Yeah, right.
And who's looking at it?
Yeah. So what are the personnel?
I was a part of a festival that they had, and I was pretty active around that time, but not since. For jobs, you mean? Like for work?
Well, just in terms of the information that goes out, or so like the way in which people know about other things that are happening. Yes, Sarah?
Well, just a kind of a comment, but I'm also interested in how people might respond to it. But what I think is really interesting about what we're talking about today is that this is nothing new.
Right.
Right?
That's right.
Artists have been doing this forever. Wherever there's been artists who needed resources and needed community, they have gotten together and they have figured this out. I think one of the ideas that's been kind of percolating in some of the questions, I think Emery, you've been trying to tease it out, I heard it a little bit in Monica's question, it's just like, as much as you don't want them to feel like closed circuits of people who know each other, who connect, which is, again, how people meet each other. I mean, regardless of the strength of social media, Maya got a recommendation of a friend who got her to another friend. I mean, I think that's how human beings normally connect. So there's something about these groups that may or may not, regardless of intention, can seem exclusionary or seem elitist or seem like, yes, that's happening, but how do I get in there if I don't know anyone? And so I think that point of entry question that Monica was asking is actually really significant, because some of these things, I don't know how many people have heard of these groups before coming to this panel today. I don't know how the information is shared about your groups. I mean, a lot of people are relying on social media right now because none of us have money to like really advertise our organizations. But this question of point of entry, of how people are connecting with these groups, of how much they are serving you and your network of people you care about, or how much you want them to open up to serve artists who you've never met yet, I think it's just an important one for different groups to wrestle with.
I mean, I think for sure, I completely 100%. I mean, that was initially why we had a two-tiered mission, like from the get-go. And it's morphing and it's morphed, you know, nobody's figured this out. And so it's like, when I initially began, the main focus was to make the workshops be so intimate and kind of comfortable that people could really give honest criticism and feedback, and to create a safe space. And so it's actually a discussion we're having as to whether we actually would want to go to a public place like something like here or to AGX, because does the living room do something? Does the dinner party do something? Does it allow for a certain environment? And so that's like an ongoing question. But I mean, I think anyways, like in the reading that I've done, or the kind of small amounts of participation I've had in like, for example, the union at WGBH or at WGBH, or especially within the cartel, is that while you have a small dedicated group of folks who are willing to go kind of above and beyond and to be the leaders, there does, after a certain period of time, there does need to be some sustainability, like beyond yourself, is like the first thing. And then the second thing, I think one thing that at least I will admit that we have to learn from the business community and from people who are in like the money-making business, is that you do have to provide something for the community. It's just like you can't make a group, and then that's why I'm almost like reticent about the 501c3 thing. You can't make a group and then say, hey, give us money. Like, I feel like there needs to be a track record. There needs to be like a proven kind of like track record where you are reaching out consistently. And so that's why we really haven't even made that decision quite yet, because it's like we want to be able to prove to the community and have them not even ask the question, you know, what do you really do? Like, how do you really help? Like, we want it to be answered before we actually come there. And so like, so for me anyways, I have like an intense strain of like volunteerism, I feel like, in my blood, that I think in principle one should do that with their life in general, whatever they do, not just with documentary filmmaking, but just in general. But so that's why we set it up as like the two-tier. But that being said, it's like that is our central problem, because it's like there's a decent amount of our members who are just like, why aren't, you know, we should do more within the group. We should do more. We should point our resources this way. Why are we, you know, we don't even know people in Maine. Why are we helping this festival? Like, these kind of things. And so it's a challenge, but it's like, that's actually why we set it up as like a two-tiered thing, because I wanted to at least be able to answer that question, be more comfortable with answering that question.
Yeah. And the answer can be no. The answer can be like, we have decided that this is what serves us and this is great for us.
Yeah.
But then the question, you know, so then I wonder, and then we miss BFBF, right?
Yeah.
Well,
another point of entry for
well, I think the interesting thing is that it wasn't a mutually exclusive question, right?
No.
So the thing is that by having something at a larger scale, you actually have some support in helping to coordinate some of these things that you want to do. It's sort of like, okay, so one example, I mean, you think about the things that went away, the newsletters about where are the grant opportunities. I mean, LEF is doing that right now, right? So I look at your newsletters and it lists what are the grants that are coming up, what are the screening opportunities. So that was one function. And when you centralize all of those things, then people actually know where to go. So instead of saying, oh, do I know Rob or who do I know? Then when you create a focal point that's clear enough, then people actually sort of have a point of entry from which they can go to other places, right? And so the other thing is the New England Film and Video Festival, when it existed, that was a great way. So here, this is the Independent Film Festival, but there it was all New England artists. So you knew when you were looking at those people that they were all in your backyard somewhere, right? And that you could kind of figure out or go meet them or whatever. So it actually made the community visible. And I think the question is, how do we collectively make the community visible in its entire breadth and depth?
Which
and
makes it more inclusive, which I see kind of
Right.
missing. Because
Yeah,
Women in
I
Film
agree.
Video had that through the mentorship, and when I first moved back here to make my film, I would go to New York once a month to go to the workshops that Women Make Movies are doing to figure out how to write a grant. Like saying, well, you can apply, that's to me a little bit like shutting someone down who I didn't apply to Filmmakers Cooperative because that application is really daunting as a first-time filmmaker. I get the need now, but it was so much better the model of Women Make Movies, teaching you, giving you resources, telling us, talk to everyone in this room, because this is really going to be your community, other filmmakers trying to make their films. And those things provided an entryway to like young emerging talent or people who move here who bring tremendous resources, who maybe came to teach or do other things, but I don't think we're doing enough to support each other, and I don't think we're doing enough to provide those entry points or really give a service back. Like I think, Cartel did workshops that we've done before, that's a tremendous asset to share with other people because you all have so much skills to share.
And Film Fatales is doing they're doing master classes, they're doing meeting with the grant writer, they're doing all the stuff in New York. And they're also like having 3 simultaneous dinners on the same Monday night because there's so many people. So the question is like, does something like that have legs here? Like, would it be possible? And to include men and to, in these events or, I'm just curious because I just landed here and I'm like.
Well, actually, I think Filmmakers Collaborative is also a really interesting question because Filmmakers Collaborative itself has struggled exactly with the issue of being able to maintain paid staff. And it kind of, I think Women in Film and Video had this issue too. I think there was a time when there was a half-time staff member and then it became full-time for a while and then that went away. And then I think with Filmmakers Collaborative, that's been the case also. And so the general idea, I mean certainly with BFEF, when it got up to a certain scale, it was always like the idea, could it actually break through a certain level so it could have the kind of infrastructure where that monetary need would be sustainable. So, it's sort of like you have to, when you get to this mid-size in an organization, you don't really have the fundraising infrastructure that you need to keep it going. And yet you're large enough that it's not volunteer-based anymore. And so you're kind of in this, I think, purgatory.
I was just going to say, ours is a little bit different because we have
because you're single-focused.
Well,
I think
we're closed in some ways in that you can't become a New Day member unless you have a finished film.
Right, that's right.
And so you have to have a finished film.
Right.
However, what we've been doing, I don't know how actively we're doing it, but for a long time we were sending people out to go to film festivals. See if there are any good films out there. I mean, make sure that you let us know, and we'll go find the filmmaker, see if they're interested in New Day.
I was head of acquisitions on this committee for 2 years, and my job, I went to Sundance, I had an outreach table, but the problem with that is I reached out to so many people that we got all these new members, and then we had to stop for 2 years and take a deep breath and try to figure out what our capacity was. It was now it actually is really hard to get into New Day because we get so many applications because there's this desire to self-distribute, and after a few years, maybe the distributor you're with doesn't promote your film anymore. So then now filmmakers are coming to us.
Back to us.
So it's a challenge, and it's a capacity question. And
so the question is,
maybe
how closed are we? I mean,
so maybe New Day's model is actually great for New England filmmakers. Maybe there's something that if New Day itself doesn't have the capacity, maybe that's a really great
people to
self-distribute. Yeah.
Well, I think having something like the Boston Center for Film and Video would be great. If it did have one-stop shopping, and that name, if you're coming in from out of town or whatever, it's like, oh, Boston Center for Film and Video, they probably have something that might be interesting to me. I think, now it's hard to know with the way that our names are actually. It's like, what the hell are those guys? You know?
What is AGX?
Yeah, exactly. Or I mean, even New Day.
It's
like
so
New
similar.
Day.
You know,
Is that like some kind of?
When I Googled it, it actually comes up in Yahoo Finance, Rob.
Oh, yeah. That's
Which is
right.
really exactly
it's-
what you were shooting for, right?
Right, where the,
Yeah.
the stock price is up.
Right.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it's a good point that I think that notion of having, like when I went to the Boston Foundation, I saw hundreds of organizations there to listen to their new grant thing. And I thought, well, what the hell, that would be great if they could sort of do something like work towards getting a center together that had something that, like, our collectives are definitely working their own missions. There's no question about that. But there is a larger mission that you're talking about, which I agree, which is, for the animator lady, it's like, there's so many, there's hardcore animation, like there's just animation, and there are animators who want to do things that are more like narrative animations, and then there are people who want to do stuff to work as support elements for other kinds of movies, and just to be able to say, oh, well, I know where all those people kind of funnel their stuff. The idea of central productions is just for jobs, so it's kind of weird, or like you're talking about NewEnglandFilm.com, but I'm sure there's a better infrastructure that could be there.
It's kind of, it seems like it's an issue with, like, does centralizing things in and of itself make it more efficient, or does keeping it decentralized and pocketed, is there some kind of strength?
Well, this
like,
could
is
be
there
federation model rather than
Well, I
this
think,
is the nation state.
at the time when
Right.
BFBF got started, what was radically different was that equipment was so expensive that there was a need for filmmakers, period, to collectivize, because it was just any of the video equipment, any of the film equipment was out of the reach of most individuals. And now that, given that has completely changed, that actually
Has
equipment
it?
for the most part.
Yes.
So what kind of equipment are you talking about?
Well, but then
Do it on
People can
your
use-
cell phone.
yeah, but there's
No, they're
you
like-
can make things
Yeah.
for at a level that you couldn't before, really.
was
So
so expensive
so
before.
the onus has shifted from production in a way to actually completion and distribution and networking, and that's
Yeah, but see,
much harder.
I'm going to disagree with that because, I mean, from my point of view, like paying $1,500 to buy a laptop is a lot of money for some people. I mean, so then imagine I want a camera, I want a DSLR. Oh, that's $3,000, like for the rig. That's like crazy for some people. I mean, for us, it's like, oh yeah, I'll use my credit card or what. I don't know.
It's a lot less than the equipment was.
I'm not saying,
right.
but I'm saying now rent is like a big deal for people.
Right.
People are
That's
paying
right.
60% of their income on rent. They
Yes.
can't afford to do this stuff without asking people for the help.
Right.
Right. So that's why you need to have that. That's why I said that, is because, yeah, I mean, if you want to use a Canon C100, there's a great camera. That's why I want a camera. So you got to be involved in an institution and have someone give it to you. You're not going to pay $10,000
Right.
to get that thing, or hire a cinematographer $500 a day to use that thing. If you're really down on the super low end and you really are breaking into this thing, that's what the thing. This pool of money that people are looking at. It's like, why are you paying that money? You're buying into a whole. Okay, Mr. Ideology coming in. It's like that's what's happened. We've all have this illusion that things are easier and cheaper now, but our lives are pressed to the limits because of all this greed that's out there and all this inflated prices for all this equipment that we think are normal now.
Yeah.
When I got into this business,
I'm just
when I got
saying
into business,
that
like
honest-
$0 for a Super 8 camera, $1 for
Right.
a roll of Super 8 film, and the
can't
handy
find a
cams were
Super 8 now. It's
$1,000.
hard to find a
No,
Super
you can get them on eBay. That's the thing. Now you can get all this stuff, and it's like there for you, right? You can get like legacy cameras, not just film, but like video cameras. I understand that, and there are places that can be repositories for that. But people who are like trying to make documentaries now, they have to work in HD, and it's moving to a place where they're going to have to work in 4K at some point.
And the deliverables
And you have all the
you have to
editing
pay-
things that happen, terabyte hard drives and stuff.
Well, then you have to pay a festival
Right.
to show your work. It's just it's like the documentary world is just so kind of like, you have to pay entry fees, and then you have to pay DCPs that are outrageous for, like, people think they're done. I finish films for Frontline, and like we also finish independent films as well at the facility, and it's just the look of terror on people's faces once they see how much this stuff costs for like a kind of straight up like color correct or a mix done. It's just like when they hear the hourly rate, they just turn gray. And it's like, so I mean, they spent however much money. They got a grant for $10,000, they got a grant for 20 grand. Good luck, man. That's like 3 days in a facility. Like the DCP itself, it costs like you know, like almost like, you know, 1/4 of that. It's just like, and then you have to pay festivals and then your travel costs. And so it's just like, it's not like, I do agree that it's, and for like we're in a place of privilege, and like I always want to check that. It's just like for people who are in institutions, I'm lucky to be where I am, but I don't come for money. And so it's just like my parents, like where I'm from, my family's not able to spend this kind of money on cell phones, like or even just like upper end everything. And so it's like, it's always good to check that like I'm in a position of privilege. And so in Boston especially, it's like we really do need to be thinking about how to get to people who don't have that kind of access and don't have those kind of resources, because they're literally all around us. Like it's not, we're not in this little Cambridge bubble. It's just like, it's all around us. And so I'm kind of with Todd. I agree with you.
I think we have to revive the media centers.
The media centers, yeah.
I think they played a very, and one of the interesting things historically when you look at them, I think that, you know, the Media Arts Center, those organizations grew up in the late 60s, 70s, around there. And so, you know, with the medium being young too, I think that they all went in different trajectories and sort of had this experience. And for BFF, when equipment was changing, you know, the cable companies were coming online, and they were offering free access to equipment, and we were renting equipment as part of the revenue stream, and so that was threatened, and then we had to figure out how to make money in other ways. So all of those shifts, you know, and as there are very few of those media centers that have actually survived nationally, but a few have. So you know that it's interesting. But yeah, they kind of brought all of these different worlds together and provided a level of this, and even the Vision Award too, just in terms of what that did for.
Since we're talking about, I'm with you in not being familiar with the group that everybody keeps referencing. Can you talk about what happened? Like
what happened?
What was what transpired?
Wait, before we go there, I just want to say one thing that like Stefan, I just want to make sure that we're clear on, like Stefan said something that I thought was really important, is that collectives, like your group, collectives function really as a membership that have shared interests. Their issue is expanding and outreach. That's a matter of like whatever. You want to do it or you don't, Sarah, right? It's like you want to do it. Yeah. But then there's this other ideal pie in the sky service, the community kind of, like what is the service to the community, and does that involve outreach, like letting people have educational experiences or endpoints, as you're saying, to that stuff. And so BFF was a very good model for that. We may not be the best models for that. We may aspire or not to that, but you guys have that.
I think actually the interesting thing is BFF was a hybrid of those two things, and that was precisely both its strength and its problem. So in terms of the organization itself, it was a membership organization, and its mission was to support independent film and video making and broaden public understanding for independent work. How's that? Right? Good. So anyway, the question of those two sides, the broadening public understanding on one side and the supporting independent film and video makers on the other, was always these two were a little bit in tension, because then the public that would come in, you know, it's sort of like there were these filmmakers that felt like the primary purpose of the organization was to support them, but then the public needed to come in to kind of create this sustainable model so that that could happen. But essentially it ran programs, it had an education program, equipment access, an artist services component, which was fiscal agency sponsorship, plus the New England Film and Video Festival and an exhibition series that had everything from experimental documentary narrative, and it had about a 1,800 square foot facility, 2,000 square foot facility.
Right near Berkeley College of Music.
Yeah, right around there. And I think at its height maybe close to 1,000 members. So yeah, we were about 800 or 1,000 members. And at the height of it was about a $750,000 organization annually at the time. And what happened to it was always, I think, in terms of its mix of earned income and contributed income, got to about 60% earned income. So there was a couple $100,000 that had to be raised every year, which just about killed everybody in the organization. And so eventually, after I left, there were issues of rents going up. BFF moved. It was hard to find and also I think people's expectations. How much would people work for? I mean, I cut my salary once at BFF, I think, and you know, just in terms of more than once, but nationally, you know, sort of benchmarking that and how to actually maintain a staff. And given the salaries that you could pay, how long could you keep that expertise? You know, there was a lot of turnover. There was also, so it was an incredible resource, but it never hit the size where that infrastructure, you know, the issue of having the fundraising infrastructure that it needed, or to create an endowment, or to create, at one point, I think Lada remembers this, my great dream was to actually buy a building that was very close to where BFF started, and I thought, well, that would solve its problems because it would have this asset on its balance sheet, and it would actually have a place where the community could gather. So, you know, this issue of space, or finding a space where people know is there an entry point, is one of the questions I think that, you know, dedicated, it's different than being in the middle of all these other groups, right? Rather than Boston Center for the Arts is all the arts. Is there a film?
And also having a board that was sympathetic and wealthy.
Right.
You know, because what was, you know, you're sort of choosing your board. I mean, do you want somebody whose values are like ours or has a lot of money that they can give us? And that was tricky.
So the interesting thing, you know, because there were all of these different, there was a fellowship program that was funded by the NEA. So basically, you know, with Left Foundation, I think this is true too, because everybody ended up having to come through BFF in some way. So everybody wanted money, so you'd see all of the work there. So, you know, that's how I met Mary Jane Doherty. That's how I met all these, you know, Lida back then. And also you would see their work, and then a lot of people were coming out of schools. It was an opportunity for them to teach, so they got their first teaching jobs there. And then other people would come in, and we had color services at the front desk, and Boston Casting was there, and so, you know, everybody was kind of coming through the facility, and they were interning, and then they were going off and doing other things. They were working in the exhibition program. So the connectedness of all of those different, of the different disciplines, plus the different, and then all the other organizations, you know, Women in Film and Video was doing what it was doing, Center for Independent Documentary was doing what it was doing, Filmmakers Collaborative.
Got splintered,
yeah. And we had to compete against each other. I mean, there was, I think at the time, there was also a, sometimes a little anger that BFF was bigger and so seemed to be snarfing up the resources sometimes. But that's the question about how do you create a bigger pie. You know, that's the thing I think that collectively is an interesting question for a community to be asking itself in terms of how does it interact together, and then how does it bring people together to actually create that big pie. That was my soapbox. Any other questions? Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, I came in late to the film. It was really interesting to come in at whatever point I came into the conversation. Because I was just sitting here remembering the past 45 years in Boston in film and video. I was familiar with IFFBoston, with John Rubin and Susan Bull, where they didn't even have a place to be in the venues at Boston University and such. But I think my main point is that I think it's really how things have changed, but also it's really important to keep this conversation going. I think just like we're having here, find a way to do it, because initially there's no reason why you can't be listed as an independent organization, but have the city of Boston at least put you on the website, promote you, Mass Film Office, sort of break out into less commercial and more, you know, a different carve out than what they're doing. Also the Mass Cultural Council. I know people at all three places. I'd be glad to help if some sort of coherent idea can get together and the conversation can continue. But you're right, it would be a great synergy to be able to maintain independence, but get the word out about this level of filmmaking in Boston. That is there, that people of a variety of needs and experiences, this can be their place to begin. Like I say,
that's interesting to do like a state and city buy-in, because I think IFP in New York, their partnership with the Made in New York program has really elevated it, helped IFP be sustainable, but also sort of bring in a lot of these things that we're talking about, like entry point support, meaning and impact for the community, engagement. Like it works at so many different levels, but I think it's part. I'm sure that the Maybe New York program really helped their emerge from there.
Well, Boston, I mean, this is a great time to just try to do that in Boston, because we're trying to get them to do more outreach than just artists, painters and things. I don't think they realize all the potential that there is, all the people trying to make films. And I think they'd be interested in it. They just formed their arts and culture department in this past election. And they're motivated, but they've got a big job ahead of them. The only problem, I think, is because Boston means Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, Newton, and the surrounds. There may be a little problem, but that can be worked out. Boston is a Boston area. Then there's the Mass Cultural Council who serves the whole state. I think they could do a little more. It wouldn't take much. You wouldn't be asking much of the resources because, frankly, the resources just got cut in the fiscal year 17 house budget. So, but they have reach. They have even to be on their. They have a section of their website dedicated to the types of the roots of this discussion wouldn't cost anything. I'm done. Sorry.
What was your name?
Don Schaefer.
Don Schaefer.
Hi, Don Schaefer.
I have a suggestion. What about a potluck dinner party at AGS?
Oh yeah. We'll do
We can
it.
continue
That's
the
great.
conversation.
Yeah. No, that's a good idea.
And we need a volunteer to organize. An Emerson student to organize. No, but seriously.
No, that's a great idea.
I mean, does everybody know, or have anyone heard about the Slide Luck Pot Show? It's like this amazing, incredible event that happens in New York. It's a slideshow, and it's people come and it's like this massive potluck. It's Slide Luck Pot Show.
Oh, they don't have pot there.
They don't. That's what we could do that too with the new dispensary. No, but
That used to be a big part of the film scene here.
Oh, God. We could provide that, but we could, have some kind of a big event where people come together and just continue the conversation, and then somehow.
All right, so it
Okay,
sounds
it's
like
less for you.
Rob is volunteering AGS.
Yeah.
Then we'll figure out where to post it. So in any case, I think our time is up. I'm getting the signal. So,
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much to all of you.
Yes,
And
yeah.
I do really hope that the conversation continues, so it's kind of meaningful that this is in an underground space. I feel like we should bring this conversation up into the light. If you guys want to go hang out at a bar together, go do it. I think I might be up for that too. But yeah, we should have continuing conversation. So potluck, totally in favor of it. Thank you again.
We could put it on your mailing list.
Yes.